This is one of Star Rail's most underrated characters, and today I'm going to show you how to build them. But before I do that, I need to come clean. I genuinely wasn't sure how great this character would be since it seemed like her strength would only come from fighting enemies weak to fire. However, I could not have been more wrong since I severely underestimated how impactful her speed and attack increases alone were. Even in situations where you aren't fighting enemies with fire weakness, this character is just too crazy. And I haven't even brought up how good it feels to get her for free. Let's get into it. If you didn't know from my past guides or from simply playing Star Rail yourself, buffers, utility, and supports in general are super strong. And the reason for their heightened value relative to other roles like damage dealers, tanks, etc, is because they can be used anywhere, anytime. Now of course for Asta, she has her own little minigame that rewards proper planning and tuning should you play her properly. And here's a rundown of how it works. First off, it should be noted that your energy regeneration will change the exact execution of each encounter. With this in mind, Asta should be one of the first characters to take a turn and begins by using her skill on all enemies. Asta provides 7 scaling up to 15% attack to all allies depending on how many stacks of charging are present. She gains a stack per unique enemy hit during her turn, of which some will fall off depending on what level Eidolon you have on her. More on that later. She also gains 1 additional stack if she hits a fire enemy. But back to the play-by-play, once casting her skill, Astas who have increased energy regeneration can immediately cast their ultimate, which then begins the cycle of spamming skill into ultimate. However, if you're lacking in energy regeneration, an additional turn is needed or Asta needs to be hit before casting her ultimate. This is not that important since you will be spamming your skill to maintain charging, but it is nice to have access to a turn 1 speed buff. That's the gist of it though. Make her faster than the DPS on your team, cast her skill before her charging stacks wear off, and spam ultimate as you see fit. The question of which Lightcone is best on Harmony characters constantly haunts me, and honestly, the true answer lies in how you choose to play your supports. But with Asta, there are 2 specific playstyles that you can branch into that will determine your best Lightcone. For instance, if you are using her primarily for a break effect, Memories of the Past is a great choice since it provides bonus break effect and energy on attack. Additionally, if Asta serves to be a straightforward speed and attack buff, look no further than Dance for general turn advancing value. And finally, if you have the tuning for it, Passive Future also has value as an immediate damage increase within the buffing playstyle, but requires your DPS to take the turn immediately after her. Now I should mention that although all of these 4-star Lightcones perform well, none compared to the sheer value of But the Battle Isn't Over. Regardless of playstyle, the increased energy regeneration paired with the skill point generator on ultimate simply outshines any other Lightcone. Asta requires pretty frequent skill point consumption even as a non-DPS, which directly increases the value of the skill point generator that Bronya's Lightcone provides. Another great aspect of Asta that is becoming very important as I continue farming in honkaistarrail is how few traces she needs to be usable. Asta really only needs upgrades to 2 traces in her tree to be relevant. Upgrading her ultimate, which increases the amount of speed that you provide to all allies, and her talent, which raises the value of the team-wide attack increase, are both essential when it comes to using Asta. It should be noted that any and all upgrades to Asta's damage do nothing to increase the rate that she weakness breaks an enemy. So just to be clear, a level 1 and 90 Asta have the exact same rate of breaking an enemy shield. If we're looking further down the line in terms of min-maxing Asta's traces and prioritizing upgrades, Asta as a buffer would benefit greatly from defensive traces being upgraded since Harmony characters have less tankiness than other paths. Regarding her other traces though, Ignite is a great major trace to unlock if using Asta with fire characters like Hook or Himiko, while Constellation adds to the overall tankiness and survivability of Asta. Special reminder that Asta doesn't do much damage and is primarily a breaker/buffer at heart, so upgrading the fire damage traces or raising the level of her skills makes no sense. Upgrade things to buff your team or save your life, ignore the rest. Relics at the start of Star Rail were much more convoluted and confusing since there were many sets to process in such little time. However, now that we have a better idea of how much energy things cost and how difficult content is, deciding on the perfect set for Asta is just straightforward. Now, unlike in other cases, Musketeer of Wild Wheat is actually Asta's best relic set and isn't just being used since it's more versatile. So this is great for those who have felt bad about having 9 Musketeer sets and having everyone look like a cowboy. For Asta, speed is extremely valuable and the Musketeer set provides her with the exact stat that she's looking for. Eagle of Twilight Line is another set that you could maybe consider since the action forward bonus after using an ultimate is beneficial, but the consistent speed bonus that you gain from having the Musketeer set on is just too valuable. The planar set for Asta is also straightforward since she's a damage buffer and can utilize Fleet of the Ageless well. Extra HP, additional attack percent to the entire team, match made in heaven. Now I know I constantly flood a lot of my guides with warnings when it comes to things that you can get baited by, but I seriously think that the amount of people who think that they can get away with Firesmith of Lava Forging on Asta is alarming. Once again, this is not a damage dealer. I promise you that being able to weakness break an enemy is not a substitute for dealing high damage. With that out of the way, we can now address the ideal main and subsets for Asta. The best main stat for her chest and planar sphere is HP %, since she really just needs to survive. And while surviving, taking more turns with a speed main stat boot is equally as important, since you need to keep uptime on your skill and ultimate. When it comes to her link rope, she makes the most out of having an energy regen rope, which is common for all buffers and ultimate spammers in Honkai Star Rail. I would once again like to make a special shout out to the importance of the energy regen rope here. Asta's energy regen stat can determine factors like whether or not you can use her skill followed by her ultimate on the same turn as opposed to waiting, so keep this stat in mind when you're planning out fights. In terms of substats, speed is always king and its queen is survivability. That of course means that making Asta take more turns or tuning her to go before the enemies is critical. Being able to take the turn and potentially break or apply a speed buff to your entire team will make a difference in whether your DPS live. As a final point, I do also want to address the fact that Asta is a breaker, but she herself does not gain that much value from investing in break effect %, since it does not affect the rate at which you break the barrier. Break effect % only affects the debuff and additional damage that is done post breaking an enemy. And unfortunately, since break effect % has been adjusted post closed beta to be weaker, this is no longer worth investing heavily in. As we move on from Relics, it is important to note that this next section is what really makes or breaks Asta. Although she is definitely usable without any Eidolons, she becomes much stronger even having a single Eidolon. In Asta's case, her first Eidolon adds great value with an additional hit when casting her skill. If you recall, the more unique targets that you hit, the higher stack of charging that Asta gains. With that being the case, this immediately adds an additional 7 to 15% attack despite only being her first Eidolon. Terrific value. The second Eidolon, Moon Speaks and Wax and Wane, prevents Asta's charging stacks from being reduced in the next turn when she uses her ultimate. To be clear, it's not as though you get Asta's ultimate every turn, but being able to relieve any pressure from constantly consuming skill points as a non-damage dealer is immense value. Her third and fifth Eidolons are decent since they do increase the amount of speed and attack that Asta provides, but these are nothing compared to her fourth and sixth Eidolons. A core aspect of Star Rail that I've mentioned Asta revolves around is energy, and her fourth Eidolon, increasing Asta's energy regeneration rate, is huge value. In addition to this, the condition to activate the increased regeneration is simply having 2 or more charging stacks, which is honestly pretty easy to maintain. And to solidify what I consider to be one of Star Rail's best value Eidolon characters, Asta's 6th Eidolon reduces the number of stacks lost in each turn by 1. This is just too insane. Honestly, I'm unsure if I should be in awe at how game-changing this Eidolon is, or if I should be upset at the fact that she doesn't work like this at E0, but nonetheless, this has such a ridiculous impact on Asta's game flow. Given that Asta is also slated to be on Silverwolf's banner, the opportunity to pick up extra Eidolons or copies is high. So when it comes to her Eidolons, it's a double-edged sword since they're really good. Asta's a 4-star and she's coming to Silverwolf's banner. But ultimately, it is gacha and you have to account for that before you pull. When it becomes time to decide who to pick with Asta, you should know that she is extremely versatile, but does possess her own minor flaw that influences when to take her. That flaw, of course, is whether having a buffer like Asta is worth taking over a cleanser, an extra turn giver, a healer, a tank, etc, etc. Despite this flaw, however, she is very strong when paired and used correctly, and look no further than a free-to-play composition to illustrate this strength. Asta, as the buffer in the team that has Natasha and the Fire Trailblazer, benefits the team in several ways. Aside from the obvious value that she provides through giving the damage dealer increased DPS, the ability to break and exhaust enemies constantly with her skill is great. Additionally, the preservation version of the Trailblazer is fire, meaning that Asta does buff his or her damage as well. However, the real winning aspect of a team composition involving Asta is her ability to provide constant speed to a team that reapplies shields on basic attacks, needs to generate skill points in order to cast cleanses or heals, and the ability to lap enemies and control them with provokes. Therefore, a composition involving Natasha, the Fire Trailblazer, Asta, and Dan Heng has a high level of flexibility since every character has some form of team utility, a debuff, or great supported buffs. Side note, Dan Heng's speed debuff also pairs surprisingly well with the speed increase that Asta provides. If we're looking for an ideal unrestricted composition though, Asta paired with Japar, your choice of Natasha or Bailu depending on your need for cleansing, and a final toss-up between Sela or a DPS who can weakness break the enemy you're fighting is key. But before we get into this composition, I would like to mention that Asta excels in speed clears assuming you have no fear of death, but this is less relevant since you can clear anything and everything with enough determination. That being said, Tingyu and Bronya Asta plus 1 DPS is really funny to watch live, but for the safer team, there is no greater feeling than being able to cycle shields, freezes, and heals with a character who constantly increases your speed. Of course, there is mega value from being able to allow your DPS to take more turns and deal damage, but the sheer calculable number of turns provided when a character gains Asta's buff is invaluable. This also isn't even taking into consideration the value she possesses when 2 DPSs are on her side. Not to mention that when it comes to fighting fire units, the ability to break their shields and exhaust enemies quickly simply shoots Asta's value to the moon. But long story short, great buffer who allows for everyone to take more turns while simultaneously increasing your damage dealer's overall DPS. Just wait till you see how many times Shepard can freeze and put up shields then. But anyways guys, that's everything you need to know when it comes to Asta. She, like many of the other free 4 stars in Honkai Star Rail, are pretty ridiculous considering they aren't some 5 star that has an OP must-have light cone. Surprisingly, she stands her ground against a lot of the content already present in Honkai Star Rail, and I wouldn't be surprised if the speed buff she provides end up being a huge selling point of the character later. But that's gonna be it for this guide. I hope you all learned something new about Asta. I myself had to kind of dig deep to figure out the best ways to play her, but I'm glad I took the time to research. As always guys, if you didn't know, I chat, theorycraft, and laugh with or at chat live on Twitch and in Discord. I also tweet out some of the disasters that happened to me while playing Honkai Star Rail, so make sure to follow on Twitter. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, turn on the notification bell, comment below what you think about Asta, and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next one guys. Thanks for watching.